In the grand theater of global economics, there is no actor more significant, more fascinating, or more enigmatic than the People's Republic of China. As the world's second-largest economy and the engine of global manufacturing, China's economic health is intrinsically linked to the well-being of the global economy. For decades, China's incredible growth story was the stuff of legend, with skyward trajectories and relentless expansion that left economists in awe. But today, a shadow looms large over the economic titan. Debt, domestic financial instability, geopolitical tension, and the aftershocks of a global pandemic have converged into a perfect storm that threatens to upend China's economic dominance. Now, could this be the moment where the dragon, once the symbol of boundless prosperity and power, faces its reckoning? Let's plunge into the labyrinth of China's economic conundrum, and you decide. China's economic landscape is shuddering under the weight of these issues, and it's not just critics who are voicing these concerns, but the raw data and global economic experts as well. Stanley Druckenmiller, the legendary hedge fund manager who once championed China's rapid economic expansion, likened the country's entrepreneurial spirit to New York on crack. But after the fallout from COVID-19, he offers a less optimistic perspective, stating, "Looking out 10 or 15 years, I just don't see it. Unless the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, undergoes a drastic power shift, he predicts that China's economy may become increasingly stagnant." But what exactly is pushing China towards this economic abyss? What are the factors hindering its recovery from the COVID-19 crisis? And how does the CCP's fiscal policy intertwine with this current crisis? Let's delve deep into the tangled web of China's economic malaise. In most Western countries, consumer spending is the backbone of their gross domestic product, GDP. However, China lacks this luxury. While the American economy sees consumer consumption accounting for approximately 70% of its GDP, this figure stands at a starkly lower 37% for China. Yet, despite this, consumer spending has been observed to be on the rise, indicated by increasing car and retail sales. So why is the overall economy not reflecting this uptick in consumer spending? To understand this, one must examine the biggest drivers of China's economy, the property and export sectors, which have been underperforming. The property industry has been a cornerstone of China's economic growth over the past few decades, contributing between 20 to 30% of China's GDP annually. Equally insignificant, exports contribute to approximately 20% of China's economy. However, both these sectors remain sluggish, creating a drag on the nation's economic recovery. Why are they performing so poorly? The answer lies in a maze of structural issues, primarily hinged on debt. For many years, China's economic growth was primarily fueled by property development and infrastructure expansion, which were often founded on questionable investments. The concern for genuine demand for these projects was sidelined as the state prioritized economic advancement. This debt-financed, demand-dismissive approach laid the groundwork for a burgeoning financial crisis. The genesis of this economic strategy can be traced back to 2008, during the global financial downturn. The CCP, faced with a debilitating recession that rendered millions jobless, turned to infrastructure projects as a remedy. The high-speed rail project was an industrial part of this initiative, designed to stimulate the demand for concrete and steel and create millions of jobs. But this initial response to the crisis evolved into an addictive habit for the CCP. The domestic and international praise for the railway fueled further development. But in this spree of infrastructure expansion, funded by mounting debts, the question of real demand for these railway lines was pushed to the side. By the time the government realized the demand wasn't sufficient, it was already entangled in a vicious debt cycle, with new debts being accrued to pay off old ones. As a consequence, the Chinese railway company hasn't turned a profit since 2015. However, the issue of unsustainable debt isn't confined to the railway industry. It permeates China's real estate sector, which is seen as a secure investment by the public. Real estate holds an almost sacred place in Chinese society. It's used for retirement planning, seen as a marker of eligibility for marriage, and even as a symbol of social status. The cultural significance, coupled with continual rising prices, has only further stoked demand for real estate. This demand surge, reminiscent of the US housing market before the 2008 crash, led to a feverish rush to buy properties. Developers sold out housing complexes even before they broke ground. And once completed, these houses often stood empty, owned but unoccupied. The clamor to invest in property amid an underdeveloped and inaccessible asset sector resulted in Chinese families holding a staggering 70% of their wealth in real estate. This real estate boom allowed developers to employ high-risk expansion strategies. A typical practice involved leasing land from local governments, selling the homes intended to be built there, and using the profits to lease more land and perpetuate the cycle. While such a system was certainly unsustainable, the CCP turned a blind eye, delegating oversight responsibilities to local governments. Unfortunately, local governments were entwined in this perilous practice. They generated substantial revenue from leasing lands to developers, to the point where nearly half of their income was derived from this source. The conflict of interest resulted in lax regulations, allowing the real estate bubble to inflate dangerously. However, the CCP belatedly tried to intervene with the introduction of the 3 red lines policy to rein in developers' debt levels. This policy, though well-intended, came too late and triggered a ripple effect that jeopardized more than just the property sector. Multiple generations of families who had invested their savings in property are now grappling with financial strain. This burden is amplified by local governments' rising college tuition fees, even as young unemployment hovers at a worrying 20%. With domestic economic pressures mounting, international trade has become an increasingly vital lifeline for China. But at this crucial juncture, geopolitical tensions have spurred China's primary trading partner, the US, to shift its focus elsewhere. Companies are either reshoring operations back to the US or moving them to ideologically compatible countries, thereby reducing China's share of the US imports from Asia. Furthermore, the downturn in the global economy coupled with the worsening geopolitical climate has resulted in China's outbound shipment falling 7.5%. If the CCP continues to alienate the international partners on which its economy relies, it might precipitate the downfall of the regime. This brings us to the thought-provoking question: can China pivot and avert this impending economic disaster, or will the weight of these challenges ultimately lead to the collapse of one of the world's most dominant economies? Only time will reveal the full extent of China's economic destiny. However, one thing remains certain: the CCP's economic policies and international relations will play an instrumental role in shaping China's economic future. With these insights, I leave you with some lingering questions. Can the CCP effectively navigate through these storms to foster a robust recovery? Or will China's economic troubles precipitate a political upheaval, signaling the end of an era? Will China's economic struggles create a global ripple effect? How will it impact you? And how should you prepare for it? This brings us to the end of this video. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and sharing so we can keep bringing more content like this. See you next time.